Welcome back to A Time for Change. Goldman Sachs recently announced that it's committed to investing $10 billion to advance economic opportunity in the U.S. over the next decade. And the way this investment banking giant wants to do this is by specifically investing in Black women. Now, to hear the CEO of Goldman Sachs say this is just astonishing, Kristen.
Yes, Sabeel. So in making the announcement, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon specifically said this: no investment could have had a bigger impact than unlocking the economic potential of Black women. He then added that in the face of significant disparities, they've shown admirable resilience, especially as they're starting businesses faster than anyone else in the United States, building on our 20-year history of investing in female entrepreneurs and underserved communities.
Now, according to Goldman Sachs, closing the Black women's earnings gap would add an additional $300 billion in U.S. GDP every single year. Joining us now is Teresa Younger. She is the president and CEO of the Miss Foundation for Women. Teresa, what is your reaction to hearing Goldman Sachs say that they're committed to investing $10 billion in Black women?
You know, when I first heard about the announcement, I was thrilled, because one of the things that we know in philanthropy, like the Ms. Foundation, is that in order to make change happen, you have to name it, you have to track it, and you have to increase it. And so the fact that they are naming the impact that Black women have, not just in the economic standpoint, but also on the political front, because they also put forward recommendations for policy changes, was just outstanding. And we became really excited about the fact that they are looking at at multiple approaches and multiple systems for how they're going to invest in Black women in this country. And they should. Let us not get too excited about the fact that Goldman Sachs is making a lot of money. And so the idea that they are investing those dollars in Black women is a strategic and smart move on their part.
Yeah, so Teresa, 10 billion isn't exactly a small figure at all. I'm wondering how it can best be used to create equity for Black women. What's a template you would use or you would create, not just for Goldman Sachs, but for other companies who have come out and said that they also want to throw some money behind creating equity for not just the Black community, but even particularly for Black women?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I would say up front is let's not throw money. Let's really come up with a solid and concrete strategy for moving forward. And in some ways, Goldman has done that. They've taken research. They know what the impact could be. Should be a start, not a conclusion. And we need to do this over a long period of time. The oppression and suppression that Black women have had in this country did not happen in 10 years. This is hundreds of years of systemic sexism and racism that has been levied against Black women in this country. And so what I would hope and say to other organizations, companies, institutions that want to invest in the best bet you can make in America, which is Black women and or women of color, that they should make sure that they are putting as much on the table as possible with multiple strategies to have that happen. They need to listen to the ways that Black women can impact their communities, and they need to do it for a lengthy period of time and not just assume that in 10 years we will have the equity and equality that Black women deserve for this country, but that they are hopefully leveraging that for other conversations and for the work that needs to get done.
And of course, I just want to clarify that the Goldman Sachs investment program, you're separate from that. That is their own program. But of course, you share in their mission. Now, I wanted to touch on a recent report by the Miss Foundation for Women, and it's titled Pocket Change: How Women and Girls of Color Do More with Less. Yeah. While that's great, why do they need to do more with less? Why is there less?
Well, the reality of that report, the reason that we did that report was because we kept hearing how women and girls of color were not getting dollars from philanthropic leadership out there. And we wanted to create a baseline. So by creating that baseline, what we found was that less than 0.5% of philanthropic dollars are going to women and girls of color in this country. The amount of money that Goldman Sachs is willing to put forward is actually more money that is moved to women and girls of color in this country. And so what we know is when we did the research of over 4,000 organizations, we said more with less is because they are providing educational supports, providing housing supports, building power in this country. And at the same time, they're doing it in multiple ways. So they're looking at it from the political standpoint. They're looking at it from an economic standpoint. They're looking at all the ways they can do it. And still to this day, there has not been a social justice movement in this country that has not been led on some level by women and girls of color. They keep saving our communities and servicing our communities, and they are doing it on the backs of women and girls of color, particularly Black and brown women in this country.
So, Teresa, picking up on that point, because in that report, Package Change, the study says, and I'm going to quote here, that solutions come from those who are most affected by the problems, which you're just highlighting right now. But we haven't been investing in those organizations, as the report says, and as you were just saying. So will those solutions, do you think, really just continue to elude us until that is changed? I'm wondering if you think that current efforts are perhaps inefficient or futile, even if they are well-meaning, because we haven't been putting that investment into those grassroots organizations, putting it into the hands of those Black and brown women that have already been showing up for so long to try to help everyone.
Yeah. So what I would say is I think the strategies that are being used on the grassroots by these women are outstanding. What I think we have to do is we have to be very intentional about the money we want to move to women and girls of color in this country. We need to lean hard into the fact that they must be able to dream, sleep, take care of themselves, and service their communities. And the key part of the report is to say that, well, it may be risky, and philanthropy has considered it risky to invest in women and girls of color. Now is the time for us to do this. Women and girls of color are sitting at the intersection of race and gender, and we must be intentional and explicit about what we are trying to do. That is the good part of what Goldman Sachs has done, is they have said, we want to specifically move these dollars towards Black women. We understand that if we can change their trajectory in our society, we change society as a whole. What I think we need to make sure that we continue to do, and our commitment at the Ms. Foundation, which is to build women's collective power in this country, is to ensure that we don't just let metrics determine what success looks like. And so we need to be really intentional about what a long-term approach looks like, what consistency looks like when we are able to give money to these organizations, and we need to do it in the basis of trust. We need to let them determine what the strategies are going to be to move forward. And so the challenge is out there. Who will step up next, and how will philanthropy move forward?
Totally agree. It shouldn't just be about stats and metrics, but stats do also tell a story. Now, according to your foundation, giving to women and girls of color accounts for 0.5% of the nearly $70 billion in annual giving by foundations. How do we improve that stat?
Well, first off, we needed to know what it was, right? I think the reality was, for years, we have been talking about 1.5% or 1.2% of philanthropic dollars going to women and girls. We actually hadn't broken it down for how many dollars were specifically going to women and girls of color in this country. What we found in that data was philanthropy has basically been allocating $5.48 for each woman and girl of color in this country. Now, if you live in the South, you are getting considerably less than that. And if you live in the northern parts of the country, you are getting considerably more than that. So those allocations, we just needed to have those allocations as a starting point. And what we know moving forward is that's got to be at least parity, right? We've got to keep increasing that. We would love to see that doubled and then tripled, and like get above 1% would be like a coup, but that's still not enough for women and girls of color in this country. And so now that we know it, shame on philanthropy for its investment. And now is the time to continue to invest in women and girls of color.
Teresa Younger, it was great to have this conversation with you, President and CEO of the Miss Foundation for Women.